Hello, ladies. Isn't it strange how he never truly sees your worth until you've already walked away? There comes a moment every woman deserves, to be free of waiting, to be free of proving, to be finally seen for the queen she always was. You gave him your love, your patience, your loyalty, and he thought it was endless. But nothing is more powerful than the day a woman chooses herself. They say men realize what they had only after it's gone. But what they don't tell you is just how much he suffers when you finally move on. This is not just a story of heartbreak. It's the story of every woman who was underestimated and every man who thought she would never find the strength to leave. When he realizes after you move on, everything changes. At first, he may not notice. He may believe life will go on the same, but soon the silence grows louder than words. He begins to remember the little things he once overlooked. The laughter, the patience, the support he thought would never leave. Regret becomes his constant companion. The excuses he once made no longer hold power, because in the end he knows he could have chosen differently. Loneliness takes the place of comfort, and what once was steady now feels empty. He replays memories like a movie he cannot turn off, wishing he could step back into scenes he carelessly walked away from. The world feels colder without her presence. He starts to notice that no one else brings the same warmth, the same depth. Comparison creeps in, and he realizes that what he lost was not just love, but a rare kind of understanding. Pride that once kept him distant now turns into guilt, and he feels the weight of his choices pressing harder every day. At night, the silence is the loudest. The what-ifs become heavy, and sleep no longer offers peace. He realizes that love was never about finding someone perfect. It was about choosing to keep trying. And when he sees her strength in moving on, he feels powerless. That's when the final truth hits him. Appreciation after loss is the deepest pain. Because once she's gone, he finally sees her worth. And by then, it's too late. The moment of realization never arrives when everything is comfortable. It doesn't come when the heart is still receiving love, when the presence is still near, or when the voice is just a call away. No realization strikes in silence, in absence, in that empty space where someone used to stand. It is only when she is no longer waiting, no longer reaching, no longer available, that he begins to truly see. But by then, the clock has already moved forward, and he cannot rewind it. At first, he may dismiss the feeling. He might tell himself it's just nostalgia or a fleeting thought. But it grows stronger each day, like a shadow that follows him everywhere. He notices it in the smallest details, in a song that reminds him of her laughter, in a place that suddenly feels unfamiliar without her beside him, in the routine moments where her presence used to add meaning. That's when realization hits harder. The moments he once overlooked were in fact the treasures he should have held onto. And now they are gone, out of reach, living only in memory, not in reality. This kind of realization doesn't ask permission. It doesn't arrive gently. It crashes in, uninvited, like a storm that leaves nothing untouched. It forces him to confront the truth he avoided, that love is fragile, and that neglect can turn something beautiful into something distant. He begins to understand that every ignored text, every delayed call, every moment he thought he had more time, all of it added up, piece by piece, until nothing was left for him to hold on to. The pain of this realization lies in its timing. Because realization, for him, is not about gaining. It is about losing. It is about finally seeing the value of something only when it has already slipped away, when the door has closed, and when her heart has chosen to no longer wait. It is the cruelest kind of awareness, to know now what he should have known then. When the weight of realization settles on him, it doesn't always begin with the big moments. It doesn't start with anniversaries or grand gestures. It starts with the little things, the details he once brushed aside. Suddenly he remembers how she used to fix his collar before he left the house, how she noticed when he was quiet even when he tried to hide it, how she would send a message at just the right time, as if she could sense the storm inside him before he even spoke. These are the moments that come back to him, not in a rush, but in fragments that strike at unexpected times. He recalls the sound of her laughter. Not just the laughter in crowded rooms, but the kind that slipped out when it was only them, when the world didn't matter. He remembers how she listened, not just to his words, but to his silences, filling them with comfort rather than pressure. The way she paid attention to things no one else noticed, his habits, his moods, the small victories he never celebrated himself. At the time, these details seemed ordinary, almost invisible, like background music. Now they play the loudest in his mind, and he can't escape them. What stings most is not only that he remembers, but that he realizes he didn't. He didn't notice how rare it was for someone to love him in such detail. He didn't see the effort in the way she remembered his favorite drink, the way she adjusted her steps to match his pace, the way she understood him even when he couldn't explain himself. These little things weren't small at all. They were the very fabric of what made her love different. And now, in her absence, they stand out brighter than ever, like stars that only reveal themselves when the sky turns dark. Every day, he finds another memory hidden in the corners of his mind. A word, a look, a habit that once annoyed him but now feels precious. He realizes that love is not only built on grand declarations, but on countless unnoticed details that weave together something irreplaceable. And the cruel twist is this: the very things he thought were too ordinary to matter are now the very things that keep him awake, reminding him of what he failed to cherish when he had the chance. At first, he tells himself the same stories he always did, the excuses he used to silence his own conscience. He says he was busy, he says he needed space, he says she would always be there no matter how many times he pushed her away. These excuses used to protect him, they used to make him feel justified. But after she moves on, after her footsteps no longer circle back to him, those same excuses lose their power. They sound weak, hollow, almost childish. And that's when regret begins to roar louder than any excuse he can make. Regret doesn't whisper, it shouts. It interrupts his thoughts when he least expects it. It comes when he sees someone holding hands, when he hears a song they once shared, when he scrolls through old pictures he thought he'd never miss. Every excuse he once relied on becomes paper, thin, and regret tears through it with ease. He can no longer say, "I didn't know," because deep down he did. He can no longer say, "I didn't have time," because now all he has is time, empty and silent, with no one to share it with. What hurts him most is realizing how much energy he put into defending his mistakes instead of correcting them. He had the chance to change, the chance to speak, the chance to try harder, but instead, he let pride speak for him. And now pride is gone, leaving only regret in its place. That regret does not let him rest. It follows him into his sleep, into his mornings, into every corner of his day. He tries to escape it, but every road leads him back to the same truth. Excuses can only carry you while someone is still waiting. Once they stop waiting, regret takes over, and it does not forgive. The noise of regret is unbearable because it doesn't just remind him of what he lost. It reminds him that it was avoidable, that if he had only chosen differently, spoken softer, listened closer, acted sooner, the story could have been another one. But now the story he lives is written with regret, and the echoes of his own excuses only make the silence feel heavier. There was a time when comfort surrounded him so naturally that he forgot it was even there. A presence waiting on the other end of the call, someone asking if he had eaten, someone reminding him to rest when he worked too much, someone who noticed the small changes in his tone before anyone else did. That comfort was like air, always available, always there, so familiar that he never thought about losing it. But when it disappears, when her voice no longer fills the silence, that's when loneliness takes its place. And it does so with a weight that feels unbearable. Loneliness is not just being alone. It is being without the one person who made aloneness feel safe. He notices it in the quiet moments. The empty chair across the table, the muted notifications on his phone, the late night hours where there's no message coming to check on him. The comfort he once dismissed now echoes in its absence, reminding him that what seemed ordinary was actually extraordinary. He begins to realize how deeply he relied on that unseen support, how much her presence steadied him even when he never admitted it out loud. Now the silence feels colder. The spaces where she once was seem larger. He scrolls through his contacts but finds no one to call who understands him the same way. He tries to distract himself with noise, with people, with temporary escapes, but the truth returns every time. Loneliness is no longer the absence of company, it is the absence of her. And that realization cuts deeper than he imagined. The comfort he took for granted was never about grand gestures. It was in the little check-ins, the shared laughter at nothing, the way she made ordinary days feel less heavy. Now, without it, he feels exposed, vulnerable, restless. He notices how much lighter life had felt when she was around. How even his worst days had some kind of safety net. And without that, loneliness grows like a shadow, filling every corner of his life, reminding him of what he once had, what he once ignored, and what he can never quite reach again. When the nights get quiet and the world slows down, that's when the real begins. Memories replay in his mind like a movie he never asked to watch, and there is no pause button, no remote to shut it off. Each scene appears vividly. The first smile that caught his attention, the way her voice softened when she was trying to calm him, the arguments that seemed small at the time but now feel like turning points he wishes he could rewrite. These memories do not ask for permission. They come uninvited, playing again and again, forcing him to relive what he lost. He sees her in moments he thought he'd forgotten. The way she brushed her hair back when she was nervous, the way she leaned in when she laughed too hard, the way she looked at him when he wasn't even aware of it. These fragments return with brutal clarity, and the more he tries to push them away, the sharper they become. They loop endlessly, as if his mind is punishing him with the very things he once overlooked. The hardest part is that these memories aren't just images, they carry emotions. He doesn't just remember her smile, he feels the warmth of it. He doesn't just recall her words, he hears them in her voice with the tone that only she had. Each scene feels alive, as if it's happening again, except this time he is only an observer, powerless, unable to step back into the moment, unable to change a single line, a single choice. And that helplessness makes the replay even more painful. Everyday moments now feel like reminders. A coffee shop triggers the memory of mornings they spent together. A familiar song turns into a soundtrack of what used to be theirs. Even silence reminds him of the conversations that once filled it. And no matter how far he runs, the movie keeps rolling. Uninterrupted, relentless, making him question why he didn't appreciate the beauty of those moments while he was living inside them. Because now, all he can do is watch them flicker in his mind, knowing that they belong to the past, knowing that he can never press rewind, and knowing that this movie will play on, whether he wants it to or not. Silence used to be gentle. It was the kind of silence that carried comfort. The pause between conversations, the stillness after shared laughter, the quiet moments when nothing needed to be said because everything was understood. But now silence feels different. It is heavier, sharper, louder than any noise he has ever known. Where laughter once lived, silence has moved in, and it reminds him every single day of what he no longer has. He notices it in the spaces that once felt alive. The room that used to echo with her laughter now sits in stillness, and he realizes how much warmth that sound carried. The jokes that once filled the air are gone, and in their absence, the walls feel closer, the nights feel longer. He begins to see how much joy was hidden in those moments of shared laughter, how it wasn't just noise but a heartbeat that kept everything alive. Silence creeps in at unexpected times, during dinner, when he takes a bite and remembers how she would tease him about the way he ate. In the car, when a funny song plays and he expects her reaction only to be met with emptiness. Even in the middle of a crowded place, he feels the silence because no one else's laughter sounds like hers. No one else's joy fills the air in the same way. And the cruel truth is, he never realized how much he depended on that sound until it was gone. Laughter is something most people overlook. It seems light, fleeting, fragile, but now he understands it was the glue that held the days together, the echo that made everything feel less heavy. Without it, silence presses down on him, making him restless, making him aware of just how much brightness he lost. He begins to dread the quiet because it magnifies the emptiness inside him. He longs for the sound that once came so easily, that once lit up the dullest moments, that once made even the darkest days feel bearable. And yet now, all that fills the space where it used to be is silence stretching endlessly, reminding him that joy has left the room and may never return the same way again. When he steps back into the world, when he meets new faces, when he tries to convince himself that he can move forward, comparison quietly begins its work. It's not intentional at first. He doesn't sit down and measure one against the other, but his mind does it anyway. Every laugh he hears feels different from hers, every gesture seems less genuine, every conversation lacks the depth he once dismissed. No matter who stands in front of him, no one seems to carry the same presence, the same energy, the same unspoken connection he once had but failed to honor. He notices it in subtle ways. The way someone else holds a glass doesn't feel the same as the way she did. The way another person speaks doesn't carry the warmth or the rhythm that made him listen without effort. Even the little habits of others start to remind him of her. But instead of filling the void, it only deepens it, because it confirms what he already fears. No one matches what he lost. And in that moment, he realizes he isn't just comparing people. He is comparing memories, and memories always win. What makes this comparison so haunting is not that others are lacking, but that she was unique. She had a way of existing that could not be copied. Her way of loving, her way of noticing, her way of standing by him through storms. These were things that seemed ordinary when he had them, but now, against the backdrop of others, they shine like rare gems he let slip through his hands. He looks for her reflection in others, hoping to find at least a trace, but each time he comes up empty, the ache grows stronger, and this comparison doesn't stop. It follows him in friendships, in conversations, in fleeting connections. He finds himself searching for pieces of her in other people, but what he discovers only leaves him more hollow, because once you have experienced a kind of love that feels irreplaceable, everything else seems like an imitation. And the cruelest part is knowing that he had the original, he had the rarest form, and now he is left chasing shadows, comparing everything and everyone, only to confirm again and again that nothing, and no one, comes close to what he once had and let go. Choices are easy when you believe they won't cost you anything. At the time, he thought his silence didn't matter, that his distance was harmless, that postponing effort for another day was safe. He believed she would always be there, waiting, understanding, forgiving. But now, every one of those choices returns to him, not as small moments, but as heavy burdens stacked on his shoulders. And no matter how much he tries to shake them off, they stay, pressing deeper, reminding him that this reality was built by his own hands. He replays the decisions he made, the times he walked away instead of staying, the times he chose his pride over her peace, the times he allowed ego to speak louder than love. Back then, these seemed like victories, ways of keeping control. But now, those victories feel hollow, and every decision feels like a betrayal, not just of her, but of the love he once claimed to protect. The weight of knowing that he could have chosen differently crushes him in ways he never expected. The struggle is constant. He wakes up with it in the morning, feeling the heaviness before his day even begins. He carries it into conversations, unable to fully engage because part of him is still stuck in the past, wishing he could undo what he did. At night, when everything is quiet, that weight becomes unbearable, pressing against him until sleep no longer feels like rest but punishment. Each choice is like a stone, and together they build a mountain he cannot climb over. What makes it worse is the simplicity of it all. None of the choices required grand sacrifices, a little more patience, a softer tone, a moment of listening instead of dismissing. If he had chosen differently even once, maybe the story would have changed. But he didn't, and now the weight of those choices has become the heaviest companion of his life, one that reminds him every day that love is not just about what you feel, but what you choose. And he chose wrong again and again until there was nothing left to save. In the beginning, pride was his shield. It kept him from admitting when he was wrong, from saying the words she needed to hear, from showing the vulnerability that love sometimes requires. Pride made him feel strong, untouchable, in control. He thought holding it close gave him power, that staying silent made him superior. But when she no longer waited, when she no longer reached back, that pride, once his armor became useless. It crumbled in his hands, leaving him exposed, leaving nothing but guilt and an ache he cannot quiet. The guilt seeps in slowly at first. It begins with small realizations, remembering the moments he could have been gentler, the times he could have stayed instead of walking away, the chances he had to love better but refused because of ego. Soon, those small stings turn into sharp wounds. He begins to feel guilty not just for what he did, but for what he didn't do, for every silence that screamed louder than words, for every "I don't care" attitude that was really just fear hiding behind pride. And then comes the longing, the hunger that no pride can silence. He misses the sound of her voice, the comfort of her presence, the way she understood him without explanation. Pride once told him he didn't need her, that he could stand on his own, that independence was strength. But now he sees the truth. Longing proves how much he needed her all along, how much her presence filled the gaps he pretended didn't exist. Pride has vanished, and in its place he feels the pull of something deeper, something rawer, something he cannot control. This combination of guilt and longing becomes his new reality. He feels guilty for not appreciating her, guilty for pushing her away, guilty for realizing too late what she truly meant. And at the same time, he longs for her forgiveness, longs for her smile, longs for even a fraction of the connection they once had. It is a torment that never balances, because guilt drags him backward while longing pulls him forward, leaving him stranded in a place where he cannot move, cannot forget, cannot let go. The world hasn't changed, but to him it feels colder. The streets are the same, the nights stretch the same, the mornings rise with the same light. Yet everything carries a different weight now. The warmth she once added, the quiet glow she brought into ordinary moments is gone, and in its absence everything feels stripped, dim, lifeless. The places they visited seem empty even when filled with people. The songs they shared feel hollow even when played at full volume. The world continues to move, but for him it moves without warmth. He feels it in the seasons. The chill of winter bites harder now, not because the air is colder, but because there is no hand to hold, no laughter to cut through the wind. Summer feels less bright, because sunshine without her doesn't reach his heart. Even the rain, which once felt peaceful with her beside him, now sounds like an endless reminder of loneliness tapping against his windows. It's as if the world has kept its colors, but taken away its heat, leaving him standing in the middle of it all, frozen from the inside. What he never noticed before is how much her presence softened everything. Bad days felt lighter with her words. Long nights were shorter with her conversations. Even silence carried comfort when she was near. Now silence feels sharp and time stretches endlessly. Every corner of his life feels colder because she was the warmth that gave it life. And without her, he realizes the truth. The world is not the same. The world is not crueler, not darker. But without her, it simply feels colder, and nothing around him seems capable of thawing that frost. He tries to fill it with distractions, with people, with noise, but none of it changes the temperature. The cold lingers, settling in his chest, following him everywhere. He can smile in front of others, laugh when expected, move through his days as if nothing has changed, but deep inside, the frost remains. Because the truth is not that the world has lost its beauty. It's that her presence was the warmth that made him feel it. And now, without her, he walks through the same world, but it feels like winter that never ends. For the longest time, he believed love was supposed to look a certain way, that it had to be flawless, without flaws or cracks, without disagreements or struggles. He thought love was about finding perfection in another person, as if perfection could guarantee happiness. But when she is gone, when he sits in the silence of her absence, he begins to understand that love was never about perfection. It was always about effort. About showing up, about trying, about choosing the other person even when it wasn't easy. He remembers how she tried when he was distant, tried when he was careless, tried when he didn't meet her halfway. She wasn't asking him to be perfect. She was asking him to be present, to care enough to listen, to put down his pride, to make small efforts that said, "I see you, I value you, I want this with you." And now, in hindsight, he realizes that she never needed flawless words or grand gestures. She only needed consistency, but instead of effort, he gave excuses. Instead of presence, he gave distance, and now he finally understands the difference. Love, he sees now, is built on small things, checking in, remembering details, choosing patience over anger, apologizing when you're wrong, holding on even when it feels easier to let go. Those were the efforts that could have kept them together, but he was too blind to see their worth at the time. He wasted energy searching for perfection, expecting her to carry everything, forgetting that effort is what keeps love alive. And now, when he looks back, he sees that effort was the very thing she gave him in abundance. And the very thing he failed to return. This realization doesn't come gently. It stings. It claws at him in moments he least expects. Because effort is something anyone can give. No special talent, no perfection required. Yet he didn't. And now the truth is clear. Love wasn't asking him to be flawless. It was asking him to be willing. Willing to try, to fight, to show up. And in her absence, that truth echoes louder, reminding him that effort was all it ever needed, all it ever asked for, all it ever took. And he let it slip away, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to hold on to. Nights have a way of exposing what the day manages to hide. During daylight, distractions are everywhere: conversations, work, noise, movement. But when darkness settles and the world grows quiet, there is no escape. That is when the weight of his choices crashes hardest, and the nights become heavier than he ever imagined. The silence of midnight is not empty. It is filled with echoes, with memories, with questions that have no answers. It is filled with what-ifs. He lies awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments he once brushed aside. What if he had stayed a little longer that night instead of walking out? What if he had listened instead of defending his pride? What if he had held her tighter when she pulled away instead of letting the distance grow? Each what-if becomes another chain around his chest, pulling tighter, making it harder to breathe. And the cruelest part is knowing that these questions will never leave him, because time has locked the answers away. He turns to one side of the bed and feels the emptiness. Once there was warmth there, laughter in the dark, whispered conversations that stretched into dawn. Now there is only space, cold and unyielding, a reminder that she is not coming back. Every sound in the night feels amplified. The ticking clock, the hum of the air, the beating of his own restless heart. And with each sound, another thought arrives. another possibility of how things could have been different, another alternate ending that now lives only in his imagination. The heaviness of the night is not just in the silence, it's in the weight of regret that refuses to let him rest. He closes his eyes to sleep, but instead of dreams he is met with visions of her, visions of what once was, visions of what could have been, visions of the life he lost through his own hands. And as the hours drag on, he realizes the night is no longer a place of rest. It has become a battlefield of what-ifs, and no matter how many times the sun rises, the weight of those questions will follow him into every dawn. There comes a moment when he realizes she is no longer standing where he left her. She isn't waiting, she isn't checking back, she isn't holding space for him anymore. Instead, she has begun to move forward, with quiet strength, with steady steps, with a resolve he never thought she could summon. And seeing that strength, seeing her rebuild without him, fills him with a kind of powerlessness he cannot shake. At first, he tells himself it's temporary, that she will come back, that her silence is only a pause, that her distance is only for a little while. But then he notices the changes, the way her smile no longer carries his name, the way her days no longer revolve around his presence, the way she grows lighter, freer, stronger, as if the very weight he once placed on her has finally lifted. And it unsettles him, because it shows him a truth he avoided for so long. She did not need him to survive. She only chose him, and now she has chosen to let go. He feels powerless in ways he never expected. Powerless because no words can undo what has already been done. Powerless because no action, no sudden effort, no desperate attempt can erase the months and years where she carried the relationship alone. Powerless because her strength in moving on is the clearest sign that his time is over, that the place he once held in her life is now empty, sealed, and unreachable. And the more he sees her rise, the smaller he feels within himself. This strength of hers is not loud. It is quiet, steady, undeniable. It is in the way she no longer answers the messages he finally sends. It is in the way she laughs without hesitation, as if she has learned how to breathe without him. It is in the way she looks forward instead of looking back. And for him, each display of her strength is another reminder of his weakness. Another reminder that he gave her reasons to move on. And she found the courage to do what he never thought she would live without him. And so he watches, powerless, as she builds a world where he no longer exists, powerless as she walks into a future that no longer includes his name, powerless as her strength becomes the very thing that exposes his deepest regret, that she found the strength to move on, and he can do nothing but stand still, caught in the shadow of what he lost. There is a truth he never wanted to face, one that people speak of but few truly understand until it happens to them. Appreciation after loss is not gentle. It is sharp, it is merciless, it cuts deeper than any blade. Because when she was there, when she stood beside him, her presence felt ordinary, almost guaranteed. He thought he had time, thought he could always give more later, thought she would never stop giving. But after she is gone, that's when appreciation arrives. Late, heavy, unforgiving. He starts to see the details he never noticed, the patience in her voice when he was short, tempered, the loyalty she gave without asking for anything in return. The small sacrifices she made daily, sacrifices he never thanked her for, sacrifices he now realizes were love in its purest form. He begins to appreciate her silence, her care, her endurance, all the things he once dismissed as natural. And each new realization strikes harder, because it comes when she is no longer there to receive it. The hardest part of this truth is that appreciation is useless once it arrives too late. He cannot go back to tell her how much her efforts mattered. He cannot rewind time to hold her closer, to listen better, to protect what she gave so freely. The words "I understand now" have no weight when spoken to an empty space, to a closed chapter, to someone who has already moved forward. And so appreciation turns into pain, because it is not shared, not expressed, not heard. It remains locked inside him, echoing against walls that will never answer back. Every memory becomes a lesson now, but the lessons are cruel. He sees how rare she was, how irreplaceable her love had been, how her presence was the very anchor he needed but never valued. And with every realization, the pain deepens because he knows the truth too late. Appreciation after loss is not a gift. It is a punishment. It forces him to carry the weight of knowing he had something priceless, something most people search their whole lives for, and he let it slip through his hands. And now, every moment of appreciation he feels is tied to a single unchanging fact. She is no longer there to see it, no longer there to feel it, no longer there to know that only after losing her did he finally understand what she truly was. And so, in the end, he stands face to face with the one truth that cannot be softened. Sometimes the greatest lessons in life come too late. He learns that love is not promised, that presence is not permanent, and that silence is often louder than words. He realizes that what once felt ordinary was in fact extraordinary, that the moments he rushed through were the very treasures he should have held on to. And as he carries the weight of regret, he finally understands that the deepest pain in this world is not losing someone. It is losing them and then discovering what they truly meant when it's already too late.